Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Heather. I am a junior consultant at Turner and Townsend, and I work as part of the learning and development team on the Social Housing Retrofit Accelerator. So for today's presentation, I am joined by Paul White and Jessica Scott Henker from Home Group, and they are going to share their experience of putting together their retrofit project, which was successfully awarded funding in Wave 1 of the SHDF. So I will let Scott and Jessica introduce themselves in a bit more detail in just a moment, but you can access all of our recordings of our masterclass content within the resources section of the SHRA website. You can find that at socialhousingretrofit.org.uk. I will pass over to Jessica and Paul to take you through the presentation.
Thank you. So as some quick introductions, I'm Paul White. I'm the Lead Sustainability Manager at Home Group. I cover everything from housing retrofit to our net zero journey all through to biodiversity, and have a team which kind of helps deliver our strategic goals on that lessons. And Jessica is in my team doing reduction.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at Home Group. I've completed my PAS 2035 training, so Qualified Retrofit Coordinator, so I'll be leading on that side for the retrofit project. I also look at fuel poverty and anything sustainable, helping with Paul as well. Paul, you want to run through this bit?
Yeah, no problem. So we're just going to talk a brief overview about Home Group, what we do, where we're based, why we've put in a bid to base for Wave 1 of SHDF, what lessons we've learned from running pilots in the past, which have informed some of the decision making within this Wave 1 bid, and so on. And Jess is going to run through more detail about our bid. So Home Group, we're a national provider of care and support and housing. We've got about 55,000 stock throughout the UK. So on the map there, it just shows you where our housing density is. So we operate in Scotland and England only, but we do encompass quite a large wave of England and Scotland. We have around about 10,000 homes in the northwest of the UK, which northwest of England should say, which we feel are some of the hardest to treat areas, which is why they were chose for this bid in particular. We've run a number of pilots over the last 4 years, and in honesty, we have learned a lot, probably more from the mistakes we've made, whether that be which components we choose to put in customer homes, which components we join together, everything from air source heat pumps to ground source heat pumps and battery. But we've also learned a lot about who we partner with, who we listen to, and most importantly, which internal teams we involve in our decision making. And lastly, we've definitely learned a lot of lessons in terms of customer engagement, and we see customer engagement as a pivotal part of this, and it was a pivotal part of our base bid. So in terms of the way we think internally, commissioning has always been a big issue and one of the biggest learning areas from pilots. If equipment isn't commissioned correctly, it's never going to achieve what it was meant to. But as part of commissioning, we feel customers' ability to use the system, to feel comfortable with it and to understand it should be part of a strong commissioning process. So our SHDF project, which Jessica I'll speak more about, is based in the northwest, and the reason we've chose that is for our retrofit strategy internally. We wanted to treat the hardest to heat first, and the homes which we thought were going to form a basis of, if we can get these right, we can get anything right. So in the northwest, as I've said, we have about 10,000 homes, and these are some of our worst performing stock, EP, C, D, E, F and G. Some are still coal heated, and it's an area of the UK which has a severe skill shortage, and one of the few areas of the UK where a 3-bedroom house will remain vacant for a long time because there's just no uptake there. We also have some issues with the archetypes that are there. So in particular, we have very old prefabbed housing stock, which we took on some years ago. It's in a part of the country where rain travels sideways, so we have to think about that when we're factoring in EWI components. But also, it's an area where the house pricing and the stock value is low. So when running through where we could run a retrofit, it makes sense, let's say in the southeast and some of our stock, to spend £30,000 on a property if that property is worth £200,000, £300,000, £400,000. whereas in the northwest and Abbey Town and outside, some of our properties are worth 50, 60,000 pounds. So in terms of a retrofit cost, it can come up to over 50% of the total value of that property. And again, just focusing on the skills package there, we found through running pilots in the past, it's really difficult to partner with an organisation that's able to deliver retrofit at quality and in scale in these areas. We have had to move to Scotland to find a partner which is able to deliver in this area. And one of the things we wanted to draw out of this is, well, actually, if we're going to do this on scale, we need to form some sort of skills academy in that area. So this SHDF Bays 1 project slightly touches on that. And we also got a lot of fuel poverty in this area as well. So as I've mentioned, there's a lot of coal-fired houses in this area, some of which form part of this project. We have customers who receive free coal in perpetuity from family members which worked in the mining industry. So again, another tricky solution to ask customers, particularly in today's climate, to go from a free heating system, albeit a not very efficient one, to one which we're predicting will cost about £2,000-3,000 a year. So Jess has done an amazing amount of engagement, and I know most of the value of this talk beyond what we're talking about now in the slides will be the Q&A and lessons learned. So moving on to lessons learned. From our previous pilots, as I've mentioned before, we have decided to look at what mistakes we've made rather than just the successes. And I think that's the key. And that's where our growth has been in building this project and being open and honest about, well, what mistakes has Home Group made in the past, or other HAs or like-minded organisations made in the past, and how can we build upon them? So one of the first things that I drew out through working with our customers from the pilot areas is we needed to get in earlier and engage with them earlier, and engage with our internal teams who deal with customers a lot earlier to make sure we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. As I've mentioned, we look at what others have done, so where have their mistakes been if they're willing to share it. And in terms of our retrofit pilots, we have quite an in-depth one at Gateshead Innovation Village, and also in these areas which we're now operating in the northwest, which the Bays bid forms a package of, where we've been out installed EWI, but nobody thought about the weather, nobody thought about water ingress from sideways rain, and nobody really looked and performed due diligence beyond what a consultant had proposed. And I think all of these lessons learned have allowed us to think about the problems, mitigate the problems, hopefully before they arise. And the last, I guess, key one here, which Jess has been a blessing, is our internal resources. Early indicators are stating that, this is a 90 property retrofit, which Jess will detail, but it's taken probably 90% of Jessica's time as a retrofit coordinator. So when we're looking to scale up and when we're looking to form this bid, we really had no pertinent information on that. So past 2035 compliance, how overbearing was it going to be in terms of administrative time? So this has been a real moving lesson moving forward. So, but we did use pilots to inform how much consultants could add to this. But in terms of past 2035, what we've found so far is an internal resource is absolutely essential. So some of the measures that we're looking at are EWI, cavity wall, loft top-ups, ventilation, which has been a real tricky component to kind of specify. Air source heat pumps, as I say, some of those are already in situ from previous pilots, and also some of those will be replacing coal fire. Doors and windows, solar panels with batteries, LED. We're finding that a rewire is more than likely going to be required for some of the housing stock. And new kitchens and bathrooms, which we feel is a real selling point. It's almost easier to do the making good with the new kitchen and bathroom in some of the properties, but it also allows engagement to go a lot smoother. Customers see an uplift not only in the heating system, but also in the aesthetics of the house. So in terms of what do these properties look like, and we've just included a few photos on the next slide just to give an indication of some of the stock we're working with. So as I say, some prefab, some non-traditional construction, some really old stock which was inherited from the local authority as we sequestered them quite a while ago. And as I say, this area has specifically been chosen because it is one of our worst performing areas, I should say. It's an area where there's a tragic lack of skills, where there's quite severe fuel poverty, but also where wind, weather is quite so it's an area where we feel if we get it right this time, our wave 2 bid and potentially a wave 3 bid should run a lot smoother. So I'll just pass over to Jess now. We'll just go through kind of our bid and how we got there and what we're doing.
So I'm Jess. I'm leading on the retrofit coordinating side of this project. I qualified last year as a retrofit coordinator and got my Trustmark accreditation on that. So obviously for Home Group and myself, this is a lot of new skills to learn. So along the way, we've really relied on consultancies to help support us and shadow along this process to allow us to get things right the first time. And get a lot of key learnings from this rather than trying to stumble along on ourselves and find the way. So to reach out and get a lot of support. So I'll just run through the 6 steps of the compliance for the PAS 2035, what we've done for this, what went well, what we'll learn for future projects, and hopefully share a few learnings on this and our customer engagement strategy as well. So the first stage was the preliminary assessment. So when we applied for the bid, we put our target as SAP 87 and a space heating demand of 85 kilowatts per hour. This was our target to reach net zero within Home Group internally before the government sets out their net zero ambitions. Along with this, we've got our PAS requirement to do what our intended outcomes are. So a lot of this is looking at reducing energy usage within the homes, reducing fuel poverty, improving the internal air quality and internal comfort for customers, as well as reducing mould condensation and damp and improving our quality of our building stocks. So we've also established our project team within Home Group, the local council we're working with, BEIS and the contractors as well. So a lot of the challenges we found with this stage is our stock modelling we used to get these scores. It might differ when we're doing our improvement option evaluation using a SAP data modelling software instead. So any changes we'll look to update this with BEIS. Our risk assessment. So when we were deciding with our project, we're doing 90 homes, deep retrofit. So essentially we'd be following a risk path C, but there was questions whether we could go for a risk path B initially to help reduce on costs, timings of the project and help it run a lot smoother. But in essence of PAS and doing the right thing, we looked at doing risk path C, which would give us a lot more learnings along the way, how to do things right and scaling up how would we efficiently manage our projects in the future based on what we've learned today. So we went for risk path C on that one. This has added a few additional costs to our project, including extra compliance, extra surveys and different compliance within the PAS. In the triage process, we looked at initially doing a site visit on site, having an initial chat with customers, getting pictures of the properties, seeing what customers felt of the project, if there's any remediating works that they find important before the works take place. We also looked at the government EPC data along with our stock data to ensure that they matched up and that our data was up to date and relevant for this project. And we also conducted customer surveys as well. Let's go to the next slide. So our dwelling assessments, this was where it really started to take place on site. Following risk path C, we had to do a high level survey, which included collecting RD SAP data, ventilation assessments, photos, risk paths and site notes. We also had to do an air tightness test. So before we started dwelling assessments on site, we'd received free funding spaces for 10 air tightness tests using a blower door. So we thought, great, we'll use that. We initially were looking at doing a blower door testing, but due to the open fires in the property, this would have a risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. So there was 2 solutions, either to ask customers to have their heating switched off for 24 hours. However, over doing these assessments over the April-May period, we believe this was morally wrong for customers to do this, especially with any vulnerability, ages of customers. It just wasn't right. So we worked with a lot of consultants and to gather any solutions that we could do for this, and the best option came up was using the pulse air tightness test, which we found was a lot more efficient and quicker, and customers, there was no complaints with it and customers were quite happy with it along the way. Also, I think doing the dwelling assessments, we re-phoned up customers after they had the appointment. They were all much more engaged within the project. They had a feel for what we were doing, what we were looking for, and they could see the issues that were arising within their home and how we can remediate these. So as part of the customer engagement process, this was really good and customers were really engaged and involved in this. However, there was a few challenges that came along as well. We were looking to do 90 assessments in the project to comply to Pathway C. However, there were customers with COVID, there was customers with vulnerabilities, customers that work weekends, customers that work during the weeks, night shifts, or just on holiday, and we couldn't get appointments in with them. So instead of carrying out the 90 assessments, I think we achieved about 72 of them. And for those customers that were wanting the project to take place and couldn't have the assessment, would use an archetype basis of a similar property for these. And lastly, the challenge on the dwelling assessments was when we collected the RD SAP data, we use Elmhurst and the consultants, they use a separate different software. So the RD SAP data, we couldn't transfer between the two softwares. So we've had to re-get this data generated so it's compliant. So at the moment, we're at the design and coordination stage of our project. We're working with the retrofit designer and contractor on this, and I'm working through the improvement option evaluation and medium-term plans. So a few challenges for us is it's our first PAS compliant retrofit project, so we've not got a lot of the software installed. So to get design SAP on our system, it's taken a lot of time with data security checks and getting this installed, along with the updated SAP XML files as well. So we're slowly working through them and working with the external retrofit coordinator for support on this project as well. And the install process, we're working with a contractor, as Paul mentioned, in Scotland, and they've had a lot of experience of delivering retrofit projects. And we're also looking at bringing forward our planned maintenance programmes, such as kitchens and bathrooms and rewiring as a whole house, to reduce the amount of disruptions for our customers. So even though it might take the project slightly longer, in the long run, it's more beneficial for our customers. And along the install process, we're looking to evolve our project with the lessons learned approach through surveying and evaluation through customer engagement on site. And lastly, our PAS stage is the monitoring and evaluation. So we're following the PAS 2035 compliance through completing surveys at the end of the project. However, we're looking to enhance this through installing monitoring equipment into a sample property number. So we'll be looking at archetype basis. We'll install approximately about 23 across our project. So this will monitor our CO2 levels, temperature of the property, humidity and energy usage. So this will give us a key understanding of how the properties are performing before the install, during the install and after, and whether or not it's an issue with the measures integrating between each other, or if it's a customer engagement piece and how we manage that. We'll also look at having a contractor handover and an in-home energy advice visit as well, to give that additional support and monitoring package for customers to ensure they're using their homes correctly. And then lastly, we've been working together on a resident engagement plan for the project. So bring our customers throughout the journey with us and getting as much buy-in as possible. So we base this on the principles of PAS 2035, the 6 stages of the retrofit, and having key milestones set out for resident engagement along these and finding key points where we'd want to engage with customers. We're also looking to engage with customers on a one-to-one basis and finding out how exactly they'd like to be engaged in this project. We found out essentially through doing resident engagement programmes, meeting customers on site with different teams such as in-home energy advisors, solar panel installers, that actually, although we believe we were doing something great and good for customers, only a small percentage turned up. So we did a bit of a walk around the site afterwards and did a few door knocks, and we found that a lot of customers were really keen to engage through that measure. So actually working with customers on how they want to be engaged, when to best contact them, and to see how we can work with them to make sure that the process is beneficial for them as well. And also to look at, if this was you having your retrofit done on your home, how would you want to be engaged, and then reflect that on customers as well. So some of the engagements that we've done so far, so we looked at providing calls, letters and leaflets to customers in the early stage of the project and booking surveys. We've engaged with customer engagement days with, as mentioned before, in-home energy advisors, air source heat pump companies, solar panel companies, and customers have found this really useful to have a chat to someone that's not home group, not someone that's trying to sell you a product, and it gives that non-biased decision on the project, and also to remove any worries that they may have had, any rumours that they've heard, and to hear it from a professional. So we've also looked at doing surveys and questionnaires for customers. We'll look at doing in-home energy advice visits afterwards, so customers can have support on their tariffs, any debt support advice, how to use their heating systems correctly, how to understand how to use a newly retrofitted home to reduce any mould and condensation issues. We're looking at doing one-to-one support customer meetings when meeting the contractor, pre-install survey resident engagements, and we're also looking at doing a void show home / decamp property. So when we start on site, we're going to start off with the void properties and fully retrofit them and use that as a customer engagement show home to walk customers through what's going to happen to their home, what they can expect, and any decant customers can feel what their home's going to be like and adapt to that style of house before they move in. So I think that comes to the end of the slides here. So thank you very much. If there's any questions.